Welcome and thanks for viewing the on-demand webinar, Securing Business Intelligence on Salesforce.com with YubiKeys. My name is Alex Yakubov and I'm the Marketing Director at Yubico. Speaking in this webinar is Jerrod Chong, Vice President of Solutions Engineering from Yubico, and our guest Itzik Koren, Director of Product Management from Salesforce Identity. The original live session was held on October 20th. However, during the recording, the Salesforce.com authentication servers experienced an unfortunately timed temporary outage. The Salesforce team quickly addressed the outage, getting the servers back up online, and we then re-recorded the demos later that same day. I've now worked some post-production magic to splice the re-recorded demos into the original session. Thanks again for joining and enjoy.
So we wanted to do a quick introduction of what two-factor authentication is, and essentially be able to give you a glimpse of what's happening now in the world of FIDO U2F, which is a new open standard for two-factor authentication. So going to the next slide. What is two-factor authentication? The classic definition is two of the factors, either of where the three factors that typically we define, which is what you know as secret memorized, something you are, who you are, which is your biometrics of your either your fingers or some elements of that defines you individually, and what you have, which is a physical device, typically a phone or YubiKey, that determines that you have in possession, in control. So typically when we talk about two-factor authentication, you have at least two of these factors to provide and prove that you are who you are. Multi-factor authentication includes two or more, and depending on how systems interact, you could enable multi-factor, but at minimum, you would definition of multi-factor will be at least two. So, what is new in the world of what we deemed as universal second factor of U2F is a new open standard that has been defined, and basically what it does is it allows you to use something you have together with something you know. In the FIDO standards, it defines actually the second factor as being both either a software or hardware device. In a YubiKey case, it is a hardware device. It is supported by today the Chrome browser as well as the Opera browser, which means that it works out of the box. You don't have to install any client software for it to work. And it actually works with both contactless and contactless and contact, which is both in the world of devices. You can work with a USB connection or wireless, as in Bluetooth or NFC. And the reason why this is a critical piece of the ecosystem today is FIDO is really getting a lot of traction in terms of the big services, cloud services, as well as the platform vendors making what we deem as native support, which means either the customers, the individual consumer, or even enterprise employees can use these type of capabilities in a whole host of different environments and systems. So we wanted to show you specifically what it is to do two-factor authentication with FIDO U2F over the YubiKey. Basically, you put in your first factor. In this case, you use a username password. It could be something else. Plug in the YubiKey. In this case, we are doing the USB transport. And when you actually do the U2F authentication, the service would send you a challenge, and the YubiKey would flash, and it requires the user to touch the YubiKey, and then you're done. And the reason why this works in a much more simplistic way is because there's really no, we talk about other ways of two-factor authentication. Most people are familiar with SMS or OTPs and things like that. in this situation here, we're actually using public key crypto. So all the encryption and the messaging are all done in a very secure way using asymmetric keys. When it's also completely abstracted from the user, so they really don't need to know or have to do anything different than just a simple gesture of a touch or some other action to release the cryptographic operations. So with that, I wanted to hand it off to Itzik, who is been really the forefront of leading this charge at Salesforce to get it supported in the platform. I'm really excited that this is now available in the Salesforce platform.
Hi, first of all, thank you, Jerrod, for hosting me here today. I'm really excited to be here and to share that Salesforce completed the integration with the FIDO Universal Two-Factor Authentication standard in this Winter 17 release. Now, as some of you might know, Salesforce already supports different types of multi-factor authentications, and that includes the new Salesforce Authenticator mobile app and also some other one-time password code generator applications. However, what we found out is that sometimes an organization that want to implement two-factor authentication needs to use verification method that doesn't rely on mobile device, either because they have an internal policy that doesn't allow them to do so, or simply because they prefer a simple verification method or hardware-based verification method. So once we decided that we want to provide out-of-the-box support in hardware tokens, we started to look into different options that are available in the market today. And it was very clear right from the beginning that we're going to adopt the U2F standard for a couple of reasons. So the first reason is security. We at Salesforce, trust is our #1 value, and we take security very seriously. This crypto algorithm that is used by the U2F standard makes these keys very secure and also very resistant to phishing attacks. The other reason is the fact that U2F is based on open standard. We at Salesforce strongly believe that using open standard for authentication enables for better collaboration and better integration with other cloud services. In fact, if you look at our authentication protocols that are supported on the platform today, most of them are based on open standards like SAML, OAuth, OpenID Connect, and some other protocols. Another thing that makes this key very attractive is the fact that they are very easy to use, very simple to use, not only to end users that can carry these small hardware tokens in their keychain and use it to verify their identity, but it's also very easy for a system administrator and security people to deploy this key to the entire organization. And we will expand more on in this session about what makes the deployment process of this key so simple. U2F also provides you the ability to use a single key with multiple different services. So if you have different Salesforce organization or different Salesforce account, you can still use a single key to protect access to all these accounts. You can even use the same key that you use in your Salesforce account with other services that support the U2F standard like Google and GitHub. So now it's important to call out that in this Winter 17, we not only added support in these security keys, but we also fully integrated them into our identity platforms. And that means that there are lots of options, a lot of ways that you can use this key in the Salesforce platform today. So let's take a look and see some of these options. Okay, so let's see it in action. Probably the most common use case is enabling two-factor authentication policy that require users to verify their identity with additional factor every time they log in. So here I go to the login page, and the first thing that I'm going to do is log in with my username and password. This is the first factor. And now, as you can notice, I immediately get prompted with this additional verification request. All I need to do now is just plug the security key to the USB port of my computer, touch the gold circle, and as you can see now, I'm instantly and successfully logged in into my account. Now, one important thing to call out is that this type of two-factor authentication policy can apply to any authentication method that is supported in our platform, which means that you can apply 2FA policy to the standard login page, right, when user log in with their username and password, like we just saw. But you can also apply two-factor authentication policy to different types of single sign-on option. So for example, if you log in with an external IDP, right, it could be Active Directory, you can still set up your Salesforce org to require the two-factor authentication policy. Now, setting up this policy is very simple. There are multiple ways to do that. Perhaps the easiest way is just to assign the two-factor authentication user permission directly to custom profiles or directly to user via permission sets. So let's see an example. Let's go to the profile page under Setup. And here, you can pick the profile that you want to enable with this policy. Okay, and now if you scroll all the way down, you can find here the two-factor authentication, user permission. You can check this box, save the configuration, and that's it. From this time and on, every time user that belongs to this profile would log into Salesforce, it will be required to verify his identity with additional factor. Another use case is when using Salesforce as an identity provider. Salesforce Identity provides you the ability to manage access and control to all your application for all your users. This is the App Launcher. This is essentially a single sign-on portal where a user can go and find all the application that they need in their day-to-day work. As you can see, the App Launcher can manage different types of application. This could be an internal application that are developed by your organization, but it could be also an external application like Dropbox or Gmail. So essentially, every application that supports one of the standard single sign-on protocols can be managed by this App Launcher service. Now, for end user, this is clearly a productivity tool. User can go here and find all the application that they need in order to get their job done. They can single sign-on from here to each one of these applications without the need to remember different login URLs for different applications, without the need to have different username and password for each one of these applications. For administrator, this is a security and control tool. This is where administrator can go and provide access privileges to each one of these applications for different users, for different profiles. In addition, administrator can also apply different security policies to protect access to this application. So for example, you can enable two-factor authentication when user trying to access one of these applications. So let's see an example. Here we have enabled two-factor authentication on the Dropbox application. So now if I go and try to single sign-on into my Dropbox account, you will notice that I am again get challenged with this additional verification request. And again, I can use my security key to complete verification and proceed with the single sign-on process. And as you can see, I am now single sign-on into my Dropbox account. We also API expose all these services, and that allows you to build your own two-factor authentication policies and integrate them with your own implementation. So if, for example, you're building an application on top of our Salesforce platform, right, and let's say that this application allows users to transfer money from one account into another account, you may want to challenge the user to verify his identity again just before he makes the actual money transfer. Here I have another example of application. This is a Lightning application for sales operation, right? This is something that everyone can go and build on top of our platform. And if you look down here, you can see that we have a simple approval process. And again, you can integrate now identity verification and require the user to verify their identity every time they're trying to run this approval process. Okay, so again, I can use my security key to satisfy this verification request and gain access to this process. Now, as I mentioned before, in Windows 17 release, we not only added support in these security keys, and we not only integrated them with the different policies that we have in the system, Salesforce also provides a wide variety of tools that can help you to deploy two-factor authentication and security keys in your organization. And that includes things like the ability to delegate two-factor authentication activities to your help desk or to some other user or profile in your organization. We also have very robust reporting and dashboard tools. So let's take a look. Okay, if you look down here, this is an example of a report that can help you to track the progress of the registration. Here you can see how many users are registered with security key or how many users are not registered yet with security key. And you can use this information to determine if your org is ready now to go and turn on the two-factor authentication policy, or maybe you want to give your user some more time to complete registration before you turn on the switch and enable the two-factor authentication policy. And you can also monitor different two-factor authentication activities in your organization for audit purposes. Here, for example, you can see all the verification challenges that are associated with U2F security key. Here, for example, you can see the different activity, right, or the what was the reason for challenging user with identity verification. The last thing that I want to show is a very common question that we get often from customers, and that is what should we do when user lost their key. So to address this concern, we have a couple of options. If you go to the user management page under setup, you will notice that system administrator have the ability to disconnect user from their security key, right? So by doing that, you can disconnect the user and allow them to register a new key, right, next time that they log in. Another option is if the user just lost his or just forgot his key at home, you can go and generate temporary two-factor authentication code that is valid for a couple of hours. Okay, and with that, user can complete the verification while they are in the office without the key and get the key back when they get home. So we have many options in this Windows 17 release, and all these options are available out of the box, right? So once you enable the U2F security keys, you can go and integrate it in your implementation using the API. You can go and run a very robust report and dashboard capabilities, and you can also integrate all these capabilities with all of the out-of-the-box policies that are supported in our system. And with that, I'll go back to Jerrod.
Now, one of the differences between a security key and other OTP devices is that you don't have to pre-set up the credentials of the device ahead of time. What essentially you do is you can get a device like a YubiKey that has the FIDO credentialing or the U2F support in it, and you can just bind it to the account at the time that you want to bind it. So there's no pre-provisioning of seeds or sending of secrets ahead of time. So that's one of the huge advantage from a deployment standpoint. And then in terms of how typically enterprises, organizations roll it out, there's usually an email campaign that goes out and says to the employees about the service features enabled. You have a period of time to sign up and turn on. And basically, users actually can do both the security key and the Salesforce Authenticator at the same time to give options for recovery. Or you can also, if you wanted to do a central way of recovery, you can obviously do with backup codes and other methods for sending SMS as kind of the worst case scenario. But obviously, we are definitely recommending to use security keys and Salesforce Authenticator as a primary way to log on, and other methods should only be used and as when necessary because of the lower level of security that it has.
Thanks again for joining us. And to learn more, you can go to yubico.com/Salesforce.